now we're going to hear a little bit more from our Robinson Huron Treaty litigation team. And we're going to pass it over to Stephen, who can introduce himself and who will be our moderator. So take it away, Stephen.
Jimmy Witt, Sheriff, for introducing me. Ani bonjour, everybody. Welcome to Treaty Week. We're sitting here talking with a couple special guys from the litigation fund. As Sheriff said, my name's Stephen McCoy. I'm from Garden River First Nation, and I do help out with the litigation side of things for communications as well. And I'll be here moderating the conversation. So I'll let Mike Restool is the chair of the Robinson Huron Treaty Litigation Fund. He's going to be one of the gentlemen speaking with us today. As well, we're going to be speaking today with our cultural advisor, Leroy Bennett. So I'll let these gentlemen introduce themselves. Mike, go ahead.
Ani, bonjour. Aujourd'hui, je cause, nous sing don jaba. She can do them. And it's not be Ojibwe nin sa. My name is Mike Restool, and I'm from Nipissing First Nation, and I'm the chair of the Robinson Huron Treaty Litigation Fund.
Which?
Bonjour, my name is Leroy Bennett, and I've worked with LMC, or Litigation Management Committee, since 2017, providing cultural ceremonies, teachings, and making sure that we work at providing and doing the best that we can for our people.
Miigwech, gentlemen. So we're here talking about Treaty Week, obviously this week, and one of the main important questions I want to ask you gentlemen, starting with Mike. Say, this treaty, obviously to us, we know a lot about it, we know a lot of history about it, but let's say to a non-Indigenous person, myself, say if I was a non-Indigenous person trying to understand what treaties mean to Canada, what does the Robinson Huron Treaty mean to people of this area, can you describe to me in some simple terms, if I was a non-Indigenous person just trying to understand the importance of treaties in Canada and the importance of the Robinson Huron Treaty?
Sure. You know, treaties generally are the foundational documents of Canada. Canada would not exist as a country, as a state, without the benefit of the treaties, because there was no war here. People were here in this country before Europeans landed on our shores. So in order for Canada to become a state, there had to be a treaty with the existing people, that is us, in our own land. So a treaty then becomes a document which symbolizes a relationship between the European settlers and the Indigenous people in Canada. And that stems from a document that was issued by King George III of England back in 1763 called the Royal Proclamation. In that proclamation, the British Crown understood that the Indigenous people in Canada were sovereign and they owned title to the land. So in order to settle with the Indigenous people in Canada, the British Crown had to do this by treaty. So in 1851, the British Crown came to Bouting and decided to put together a treaty because there were some disputes at the time about people opening up mines, doing forestry operations in the territory of what we now know as Bouting or Sault Ste. Marie and in other areas. And the Indigenous people said, wait a minute, you don't have a treaty with us. You don't have any right to take anything out of our land here. So this is how the Treaty of 1850, what we call the Robinson Huron Treaty, came to be. And from that day forward, we still live under this treaty and it's ongoing.
So it's an ongoing relationship, and that's why it's so important to a lot of Canadians, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. Can you tell me a little bit now, moving forward to present day, how did this now end up into the court systems as it is today?
Well, you know, shortly after the treaty came about, Stephen, In 1851, Chief Shinwakons, who was one of the chiefs at the time, who negotiated the treaty with the British Crown, indicated to officials that the Crown officials, the people who were coming into the territory, were not honoring the terms of the treaty. That is, when the annuity was struck in the treaty, it said that if the Crown gained more revenue from the territory, the annuity would be increased. Chief Shinwakons said, "You haven't increased the annuity, but I see development all over the land, and you're not following the terms of the treaty here." So from that day forward, every so often, indigenous Ojibwe leadership brought this to government Crown officials and said that you're in violation of the treaty, and it kept going on and on and on until in 2014 the chiefs got together and said, "We're not going to listen to this anymore. Everything we say falls on deaf ears, so we're going to take this into the court system." That is the only way we were able to get some action on our treaty, is to take it into the court system. And that's how we got there. It was a decision of the chiefs and the councils of the 21 First Nations to bring the treaty annuity into the court system.
So Leroy, tell us from your perspective as the cultural advisor to the litigation team, how did the spirituality and the spirit of our culture and the background behind this treaty go hand in hand with the start of this litigation case?
It began with the passing of tobacco, which is one of the most important things that we can do. It's to acknowledge the relationship with our spirits, our ancestors. But it was also, at the time, a well thought out experience or a decision, because part of it also goes back to a couple of things that I think are really important. One of the elements that came out of it, and I began to realize it, is that we were literally, with our own spirituality, tearing down walls of possible ignorance, of possible lack of knowledge. So there's a variety of walls that impeded our path, but it didn't stop us, because one of the things is that it gave the courts, it also gave people who viewed the videos that were made of the courts a more accurate reflection of who we are as a people, as opposed to an inaccurate reflection, meaning that it's our voice that was key. It's our voice and our ceremonies and our way of life that has to be that way and can be no other way. And I'm a firm believer and have faith, although we struggled. One of the elements is that we didn't give up faith from 1850, from time immemorial, really. And as we move towards the future, one of the things is that our ceremonies have guided us. They have given us the answers we were looking for. And it always goes back to the first point I made, is that passing of that tobacco. That is very sacred to us, and that part can never end. But introducing it to the courts was a challenge, and the courts accommodating us. But part of the journey was also to teach them at the same time who we are, providing teachings, but also providing insights to who we are, because if we look at it from today's perspective, they've gained an understanding of who we are, which is excellent. But at the same note, the worst thing to be standing in any place in history is not knowing who you are. And Canada and the province of Ontario need to recognize where they stand with everything as well. And without a spiritual base, they're still going to struggle. With that, I say miigwech.
So ceremony has been an important part of this journey since the litigation ended up in court in 2014, like you said. How important is the ceremony? How often do leadership, like yourself, Mike, the chair, you as the culture advisor and the rest of the team, how often is the ceremony conducted moving forward?
We get together for pipe ceremonies. We attend. They come in 10 sweats. So I always encourage them not to wait for things to build so much that it becomes a big burden. What the LMC or litigation management committee does, they have a burden already. They don't need extra. And part of our ancestral help is to remove some of those burdens so that they can continue to move forward, but also to think clearly and also to maintain the balance of what they're trying to accomplish, the balance between relationship with our people, the relationship with our ancestors, and more importantly, the relationship with history. Because one of the things that happens, and I've always encouraged it, is to make time. We live in such a fast-paced life that we don't make time. So when I'll call everybody together, okay, we have to have a sweat, or we have to have a pipe ceremony, or we have to have a feast. We need something to remind ourselves that we need to always come back to the center, balance ourselves, and then we move forward again.
Mm-hmm. And that's such a great thing to be incorporated in. Probably a lot of people don't see that in the background of what goes on, but ceremony and culture is a huge part of this litigation, in this case, for leadership and for the committee as well. So, from my understanding, out of some of those ceremonies, there was the idea of a treaty gathering came out of the ceremonies. Is that correct? Maybe if Mike or want to speak to how the treaty gatherings came about?
Yeah, my understanding is that the treaty gathering always happened. Like it's happened over the, I should say, over the centuries since the Ojibwe people were in this part of the land. I know that one of our experts on Anishinaabe law spoke about a treaty gathering in Nipissing, where I come from, on Lake Nipissing near North Bay. In the 1600s, she talked about this gathering there, where the people came together and they made decisions about everything that concerned them. They also had feasting, they had ceremonies, they had games, and they had gift giving. All of those things are part of a gathering of Anishinaabe people when they get together from all different areas. So what happened then at Bouting, because Bouting was the original place where the treaty was signed, it was important for us to get together. And long before the case started in court, we were gathering at Bouting to talk about the treaty, to talk about our relationship with the Crown, with the settlers in this land, and it was a great. They were all great gatherings. People got together. They talked about all kinds of things. They did ceremonies, and you know that's a big important part of what we do in terms of our relationship with the Crown people in Canada. We're a very spiritual people. And it's important for us to understand about the spirituality of our own people, the clans, and all of the teachings that the elders give us, but also the spirituality that comes from the treaty. The treaty is a very spiritual document because at the time when the treaty was signed, they used the pawagan, the pipe, to solemnize the agreement that they reached at Bouting. And when you light the pipe, and Leroy will probably talk a lot more about that, it symbolizes our spirituality. And maybe I'll ask Leroy to talk a little bit about the pipe.
Okay, so back in 2017, we were asked what do we need to start this process to actually, before we get into court. So when that tobacco was passed, we talked about it and we said, okay, first of all, we need a pipe. That's what we need. One that's going to do all the work for us, spiritual work. The other thing that we would need down the road would be the staff that would come in time and would work for us. So every time the LMC or maybe one of the chiefs may ask, well, we need a ceremony. So my responsibility is to go there and start the ceremonies and pray on behalf of the people that are involved in everything that we do. So whether it's sunrise ceremony, sweat lodge, or just to sit down with the chiefs and we'll smoke the pipe and we'll get together and say, this is how we need to do it. And then the other thing I did make mention earlier, I remember saying this back in 2017, and I'm really thankful that we can see it now. It's starting to come to fruition, that our people are coming back to ceremony. And back in September when we did our last treaty gathering, it was nice to see the big teaching lodge there. It was nice to see the people there. But it was also nice to see that the women are starting to speak more. This is one of the elements that we've prayed for since the beginning. And a special acknowledgement to Martina Ozalman, very wise, women that I consider very wise. But on the same note too, everybody who spoke the day of our gathering all had good words to share. And that helped shape what we think. That helps shape how we're going to move forward to everything that we do. And once we move further into the future with this, one of the other things that we're going to do is that we're going to have more gatherings, because this is what our people need. And our identity, it was never lost. I don't like that terminology. It was never lost. It was always been there. We just need to awaken it. Because how we describe things sometimes can have a negative outcome, but how we understand things can awaken what we need to be awoken for us as an Anishinaabe people. So with that, we wish.
Which gentlemen. So let's get down to what a major question is on a lot of people's minds when it comes to this treaty and the court case, and if and when this gets settled. People want to know, when are we going to get paid?
Stephen, that's a big question, and I hear a lot of people asking about that question, when are we ever going to get any money out of this? Are we ever going to get any money out of this? Well, because what we've been saying, our people have been saying since 1851. I told you a little bit about Chief Shingwakons there when he told the Crown, you're not honoring the treaty, you're failing to increase the annuity. That's what we brought into court. The court decided that they would break up the treaty into 3 stages. And stage 1 was, the question before the court was, does the Crown have a legal obligation to increase the annuity beyond $4 per person per year? And the court agreed with us in our stand and said that as the Crown gained more revenue from the territory, it ought to have increased the annuity from time to time. That is the basis of our claim in the court. And in the second stage of the trial, the Crown brought forward some objections to the Ojibwe people bringing the case into the court. Said that the Crown had immunity from such cases, that you couldn't bring a case like this before the Crown. It said that even if there was a legitimate reason for this to get into the courtroom, it was impacted by the statute of limitations in Ontario, which said that you can only go back a certain amount of years to claim losses in a case. And the third one was that the Crown said, in any case, the most you can get from the annuity is an increase based on cost of living. Well, the Crown didn't agree with any of those arguments, and we were successful at defending against those arguments, those defenses by the Crown. Coming up next, in 2022, as a matter of fact, in September, it's being planned now that stage 3 of the trial will happen somewhere in Sudbury, probably, that the court will entertain arguments on how much compensation is owing to the First Nations based on the augmentation clause of the treaty. So that's a big case. It involves a lot of research with a lot of historical, economic historians to find out just what the revenue was since the 1850s. How much is the losses that we've suffered as a result of the Crown's failure to follow the augmentation clause in the treaty. Those are the things that need to be settled first. The other avenue would be settlement negotiations. If the Crown governments, that is Canada and Ontario, agreed to sit at a table with us and settle the case out of court, that would be a way of settlement as well.
So which option of those do you think would be quicker? If they came to sit down at the table settlement, or to keep going through these stages that we're at, and let the judge kind of determine the direction?
It's difficult to say that because, first of all, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not an economist, but my hunch is that it would be nicer to have a settlement out of the courts so that everybody will have an agreement at the end of it all, rather than having the court do a judgment on it that is likely to be appealed after stage 3. But after stage 3, sometime after stage 3, we're going to have some sort of settlement, either out of the courts or from the courts itself. So that's a good ways off yet.
Mm-hmm. So still looking at years possibly in terms of an end to all this.
That's right.
A settlement or an agreement of some sort.
That's right.
Okay. So we have talking about money, we have some interesting pieces here on the table in front of us as well. Mike, did you want to speak to this, or Leroy, are you going to be speaking to the coins that we have here?
I'll speak to just one in specific.
Okay. Which one is it? Do you want to hold it up for our camera crew there and let our viewers at home see what you got there?
Hopefully Matt can zoom in on this.
Okay. What's the significance of this coin here?
So
what is it?
This one here is the 1 penny. So the significance of this coin, and it's in our magazine. It's on some videos. The magazine right there. It'll have a clearer picture. So I'm just going to go off what I see and from here. So what people will notice is there's the crown, there's the sword, the anchor, but the other piece that I couldn't think of the word at the time was called the Kalamata Piece, which actually, if you really look at it, is the pipe. This is what we talked about a little bit earlier, the pipe. So if you hold it this way, it just looks like it's, sort of a penny. It's got a little bit of weight to it, so. But if you really look at it from this perspective, I don't know if Matt can zoom in on this or not, but from this perspective, if it's lying flat, you'll actually see the pipe holding everything up. That talks about the resources, that talks about the land, it talks about our understanding of the relationship, but it also shows that the crown and the pipe are very close together. Why? Because that's the relationship we have. It's not based on a lot of other things people may have said in the past, but the way I look at it from this perspective is that our relationship is very close but distinct, meaning we're two separate nations. So as separate nations, we have our own way, ceremonies, everything else that comes with being an Anishinaabe. The crown also had their own way. But in this relationship, that little space that's, if you look at the penny, that little space that's there speaks of how close we should have been, but two distinct societies, relationships. So with that being said, this is all I wanted to focus in on that. We have other crowns here of 1850. So, but if you look at it from another perspective, one of the ones I was thinking about earlier was that if the relationship meant that much that they were willing to put it on a coin that had value, but we look at value from two different perspectives. One of a monetary value, but the other one of a spiritual value, and that spiritual value lays also within the coin. So there's two things. So with that, that's all I'm going to say. Miigwech.
Miigwech. And for our viewers at home, if you haven't got your hands yet on the magazine, a lot of what Leroy was just speaking about is contained in the magazine as well. So you'll be able to see that. We have it on like page 30, 31 there. Everything that he was just speaking about to that coin is also laid out for our new magazine for our viewers at home as well. So, all right, so I'm not sure if there's anything else that you boys wanted to touch on right now. I see that we do have some questions from our viewers at home. Maybe we could pull up the chat to see if, is it possible to pull up the chat?
Yeah, we gotta pull it up on that.
There's no questions.
No questions? Okay. Mike, final thoughts?
Stephen, what I would like to add to all of this is that we are not looking here for a payment out of taxpayers' money. That's important for non-native people to understand here. We are not looking for a payment out of taxpayers' money. What we are looking for is the payment from the resources that came out of the territory. That's what the Crown agreed to when we signed the treaty in 1850. So we're looking at a payment out of resource revenue from the territory. Since the 1800s, and even way before that, our territory has subsidized Canadian society. Our money comes from the land. It comes from the waters, it comes from the mines, it comes from the timber. All of those things contribute to the wealth that it has been established in the province of Ontario. We have been subsidizing Ontario and Canada for over 150 years now. And it's time for the Crown to come good on their part of the treaty and to tell us that they're willing to make amends, to correct the losses that we've had since the 1800s, and also on a go-forward basis, what the annuity ought to be. So those are the things that Canada and Ontario need to do. We need to sit down at a table and talk about a settlement on that. Miigwech.
Miigwech. And I'm glad you touched on that, one of those points as well, how important this settlement and the money does mean to the local communities, because it's not just going to be beneficial just to a single group of people, but that money is going to be spread out in the community, economics, how further that dollar is going to go, right? People are going to take that money, they're going to invest it locally in the community, they're going to spend it at the local stores, and that's a benefit to everybody, right? Leroy, final thoughts from your side on spirituality?
Well, one of the key things that through the courts, and I can say this because I was the one leading the ceremonies, is that the courts experienced a lived experience of what our ceremonies mean. All those that were involved, but it also means then that they gained an insight to who we are as a people, which is a far cry from somebody who may have romanticized our way of life, who may have written documents about us without that lived experience. Because as we live it is a good life. It can be a hard life from time to time, but on the same notion, it's what sustains us as people. And part of the ceremonies I also see in a different perspective is that it's to bring the insights to humanity, is that we as human beings, more profoundly the Anishinaabe people within the Robinson Huron Treaty. And once this happens again, I look forward to having another ceremony with the courts again, because as we grow as human beings and our understanding gets wider and deeper, I guess, so to speak, we're building a relationship built based on fact of law, treaty relationships, treaty responsibilities. But on the other side of that, the proverbial coin, is that we're also bettering humanity a little at a time. So with that, I'll say miigwech.
Miigwech, Leroy. do we have anything, any comments, questions from the audience? Nothing there for today. So a great discussion, gentlemen. Thank you for your time. I'll turn it back over to our Robinson Huron Treaty Week crew. Thank you very much for having us.
Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Good job, sir. Good job, sir. Good job, Steve. Great job.
Shin.
Okay, great. That was awesome. Miigwech to Mike, Steve, and Leroy for sharing about our 1850 currency. So as Steve highlighted in the magazine, there is the coins that you can see. And you can probably see the pipe a little bit better in this one. If you can zoom in, Matt. It's a little darker, but so there's the actual, oh, that's pretty good. So there's the actual coin, and you can see in the magazine we have highlighted some of those pieces that Leroy was discussing. So yeah, I encourage you to check out our magazine. It's on our website if you want more information. So yeah, that closes up this session. Miigwech to them for sharing. We do have another session this afternoon on the history of our Robinson Huron Treaty presented by our legal team. Chris Albinati will be here joining us at 1 p.m. So for now, we're going to have a little break, and we hope to welcome you guys all back at 1 p.m. So see you guys then. Bamapi, miigwech.